Worldwide, particularly the Russian press, to start that press conference, joint press conference between Dr. Abdullatif bin Rashid Al-Zayani, the Secretary General of the GCC, and Mr. Sergei Lavrov. So we shall start this press conference, after which there will be a possibility to ask questions and discuss the topics, but with an certain organization. In the name of God, the All-Merciful, first of all, I would like to thank the local and international press for being here to cover that third ministerial meeting for the strategic dialogue between the GCC and the Russian Federation. First of all, I would like to express the welcome of Kuwait to host this meeting that was held today between the GCC countries and our friends, the Russian Federation. And I would like to seize that opportunity to congratulate the people of Russia for hosting and the perfect organization of the Olympic Games, the Winter Olympic Games in the beautiful city of Sochi. I have been honored this morning with His Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, to meet His Highness the Prince of the country. May God protect him, as His Excellency Mr. Lavrov transmitted an invitation from President Putin to visit Moscow in order to move upwards in the ambitious relationship between the two, and to stay along with the relationship that goes back to the early 20th century and to all diplomatic relations that exceed half a century. Allow me to shed the light on the results of the discussions of that third ministerial meeting for the dialogue between the Gulf countries and Russia. And before, I would like to thank my dear friend Sergei Lavrov for the valuable interventions that he presented and that enriched the meeting. And I would also like to express my regards and my thanks to the General Secretary, Dr. Abdullatif bin Rashid Al-Zayani, for his efficient role in the organization and the success of this meeting. As it is well known, this meeting is considered the third in a series of ministerial dialogue meetings between the Gulf countries and Russia that aim to strengthen the cooperation for it to include all of the levels and fields, with Russia being one of our main strategic partners. About the situation in Syria, the points of view from the two parties were different. It was agreed to continue the consultations and the discussions in order to reach a common understanding. As for the situation in the Palestinian occupied territory, the two parties have confirmed that their views are convergent in that on that field, and that the global and complete peace will not happen before Israel withdraws from all the occupied lands until the borders of 1967 and the creation of the state, the independent state of Palestine, with East Jerusalem as its capital, and according to the peace accords. We also call upon the Arabs to continue supporting the efforts of the Palestinian people for them to get their legitimate rights. Finally, concerning the Iranian nuclear programs, we welcome the preliminary accord that was signed with the group 5+1 in Geneva, as this is a first step for ending the international and regional concerns about that program that will strengthen the peace and the stability on the world. Thank you. I shall leave the floor now.
Thank you, distinguished Minister, Your Excellency, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to express the sincere gratitude of our delegation to the host, and especially to His Highness Emir of Kuwait for the hospitality and the brilliant arrangements of our operations. At the meeting with Emir today in the morning, we have confirmed our resolve to comprehensively step up the bilateral relations, and we express satisfaction with how we implement the agreements and commitments we have. The Emir of Kuwait has an invitation from the Russian President to visit the Russian Federation, and we have discussed what goals do we have to fill the future visit with substance in trade and economic cooperation, as well as in implementing major investment projects. We believe that the prompt meeting of Intergovernmental Commission on Trade and Economic Cooperation is of primary importance. Our relations with Kuwait are developing in humanitarian sphere and cultural sphere as well. The University of Kuwait and the Russian universities are in close contact with each other, as well as the Diplomatic Academy of the Russian Federation is in touch with these. The Society of Russian and Kuwaitian friendship is being established in our country. I hope that all these steps will be propitious to developing of our relationships that has a long-standing history and is in the interest of our peoples. Today we have held the third round of the strategic dialogue between Russia and the GCC. The first round was held in Abu Dhabi last year. The second round was held in Saudi Arabia, and today we have confirmed that we are accumulating expertise, and this format has proved its value. We have confirmed mutual interest in keeping in touch in a frank manner on all the major issues and find some common ground between our two parties on regional and international issues of significance, specifically with focus on the crisis situation in the region of Middle East and North Africa. We paid special heed to Syria. We have some differences on the matters that are tactical, but we're moving to one and the same goal. I believe we want Syria to be a peaceful, prosperous country where all the creeds and ethnicities would enjoy equal rights and would together, hand in hand, build a modern state, a modern country, and an efficient economy. We concur that everything must be done to ease the humanitarian situation in that country and put an end to all sorts of bloodshed and violence on Syrian soil. We are in favor of the continuation of Geneva II talks, and we expect Mr. Brahimi, the special envoy and the middleman, to promote these talks so that they are productive. We paid attention as also to the Palestinian-Israeli talks. We are in favor of the resumption of the talks last summer, and we believe that we should assist these countries, the two sides, to reach an accord in the framework of the current international law in order to create an integral Palestinian state that would live in peace and harmony and security with all its neighbors. We also discussed the Iranian nuclear program. We share a common vision that the accords reached last November in Geneva are implemented in an efficient manner, and we want to see them fully implemented so that we could move to the second phase. And the substance, the content of the second phase is now the matter of the talks between P5+1 and Iran. And we want the stage to end with the preparation of the final package of arrangements that would resolve all the issues related to the Iranian nuclear program and terminate the sanctions. We assume that the development of the situation in Middle East and North Africa should be based on good neighborly relations, mutual respect for each other's interests, and Russia being a country deeply and sincerely involved in the destinies and fates of the region's countries would do its best to make the region prosper and live in peace. We are interested, let me say by way of conclusion, to have the bilateral ties between Russia and the member states of the GCC in trade, economic and cultural spheres be supplemented by the ties in the format of Russia and GCC as a whole. We definitely would support that, and as part of the efforts to normalize situation in the region, we would like to see the idea of shaping the system of security in the Gulf region to be promoted, and such a system could encompass all the coastal countries by means of coordination, greater transparency, and more profound contacts in various fields between these countries. And if there is interest for the part of the region's countries, we would be ready to promote this initiative. And thank you so much. I would like to once again thank our hosts for their hospitality.
I would like to extend my gratitude and thank His Excellency Minister Sergei Lavrov. I will now open.
Агентство Интерфакс, Андрей Буданов.
Interfax Newswire. I've got a question to the Russian minister, Sergei. A question on Ukraine. Given the latest developments in Ukraine, a number of Western officials are calling to impose sanctions on the Ukrainian government, accusing the government of what is happening, saying that it's losing the legitimacy. And the foreign minister of Poland is going to Ukraine to represent the European Union. What would be your comment on such a stance of the West in direction of the West? And can it be a matter subject to the consideration of the UN Security Council? Thank you. What is happening in Ukraine causes our deepest and most profound concern. On many occasions we warned everybody from such a situation. The assessments were given today by the Kremlin, by the Foreign Affairs Ministry. These are the principled assessments, and unfortunately all the accords previously reached when the goodwill was manifested by the Ukrainian government, and when the Ukrainian government lived up to the expectations and fulfilled its obligations. All of this was thwarted by radicals that marched to parliament, and when it was not an authorized event, and they were not. They were stopped, and they started throwing Molotov cocktails and firing with arms. And facts are found out that these radicals have mortar launchers and firearms. All this is very serious, and attempts to seize administrative buildings and buildings of executive and other authorities are continuing. We believe this is an attempt of a coup d'etat and a military seizure of power. The extremists are to be blamed. They are to blame. All these weeks and months they wanted to see this situation happen, but still a serious share responsibility lies on the opposition that refused to negotiate and set forth demands that are outside the current legislation, and they cannot fulfill what was previously agreed, including what were the agreements in Parliament. I cannot but mention the responsibility of the West, of at least many Western countries that have been trying to interfere with the course of events, who have been promoting and encouraging the opposition to act outside the current legislations, who were flirting with the militants and radicals, who threatened with sanctions and keep threatening with sanctions, and well, by and large encouraged these provocative actions for the part of the opposition, and they consistently shirked giving really truthful assessments of the actions of the radicals, and it's an ostrich-like position, and they are trying now to continue with accusations. Some of the political leaders of the West say that Russia is to blame, trying to re-Sovietize the post-Soviet space. I believe these are not appropriate attempts, and any observer, any shrewd observer understands that. We believe that the situation should be resolved within the constitution of the Ukraine, current constitution of Ukraine, and we would warn everybody from obtrusive attempts of mediation. We believe that there has been enough of mediation by our European partners, and we would call on everybody under, well, in the current contexts, to put the interests of the Ukrainian people first, on top of the political ideas they have.
السلام عليكم. شوقي محمود من جريدة السياسة.
Peace be upon you. Shawi Mahmoud from Kuwait TV. Thank you for having mentioned the different opinions and point of views concerning the Syrian crisis. I would like it if you can specify what are the points that you disagree upon, and what is the point of view of Russia. In the same context, there were some American accusations to Russia having led to the failure of Geneva II. What is the opinion of Mr. Sergei Lavrov?
Well, before I start speaking about the failure of any event or consultation, let us wait till it's over. If we go on with such prophecies, that would cast doubts that people that pronounce these prophecies want them to come true, to be fulfilled. We've just been saying, speaking about the Palestinian-Israeli settlement. Why no one mentions that the efforts of the United States and our Western partners were thwarted and failed? They asked 9 months, and the Palestinians and the Israeli agreed. The dialogue is progressing quite hard, which does not make us happy, but no one says that there has been a failure and the door should be slammed and some other ways out should be searched for. Everybody understands that there can be no other way out but to negotiate basing on the principles previously coordinated. And it's not only about the conflict between Palestine and Israel, it's about a crisis between any crisis in the world, including the Syrian crisis. Everybody says that there may be no military resolution, but still we can see the ever-growing number of attempts to present the Geneva II efforts as a failure. So probably someone is conspiring a military option. This is inadmissible, and we assume that the Geneva communique should be fully and completely implemented, and its provisions for the end of all sort of violence. It says that the dialogue should start between the government and all the range of the opposition forces. That has not been done so far, because not all the opposition groups of Syria are represented in Geneva. And it provides for, finally, a transition towards a new state and political system. But before this is done, principles should be agreed. It should be a secular, democratic state providing equal rights for all the ethnicities and religions. And only after the parameters of the new political system have been coordinated between the government and all the range of the opposition forces. I'm citing just the essence of the Geneva communique now. Only after that, the personal composition of the transitional body may be discussed. This is it, and our position stems from the coordinated text of the Geneva communique that was approved on the 30th of June 2012, and have some excerpts from this, extracts from this, and present them separately would be counterproductive, because anyway, anybody is in favor of the complete implementation of the Geneva communique. Now the main task of ours, the most urgent task, is to ease up the humanitarian situation, because people keep suffering, and we keep working with the government and the opposition and international agencies, with the Red Cross, Syrian Red Crescent Society. Well, probably it's not as fast as we would like it to see and to be, but there is some progress. Some settlements get unblocked and humanitarian aid flows in, and the children and women and other civil individuals leave these settlements, and humanitarian aid and local ceasefires should be negotiated. The exchange of prisoners should also be negotiated. It all requires time and effort. It's much more difficult than trying to create an impression that the situation cannot be solved politically, and one should once again consider a military option. It's of concern for us that in the context when we hear such assessments that Geneva II has become a failure, the opposition leaders get wrongful messages, deceitful messages, and start feeling illusory emotions and having the illusory impressions that the global community would help them, and accuse the Syrian government of everybody, as was the case of the Libya. I hope that no one wants the Libyan situation to repeat, and now everybody will exercise more responsibility than in this Libyan crisis, and we are preoccupied by the spillover of terrorism from Syria to Iraq and Lebanon, and another terror attack happened in Lebanon in close vicinity of the embassy of Kuwait. If we turn a blind eye to these developments, the threats would spread around the region and become pressing and burning for other states. We want to combat terrorism by building on the principles approved by the UN, saying that terrorism may have no religion, no nationality, and there can be no justification, absolutely no justification to terrorists. So our common goal is to consider all these issues as a single whole. The government and the opposition should feel, both of them should feel their responsibility for the future of country, and it should not become a hotbed for terrorist groups, and there should be no more spillover of terrorism activities across the region. And a caliphate of terrorists should not be created and established in the whole of the region. No new orders of terrorists should be introduced, and in some regions of Syria, Sharia trial is happening without any ruling from court. People are executed there. So our approach is simple. We should look at these issues in a comprehensive manner. We should not think that terrorists are now in Syria because the regime does not want to cede and give up power. This is not true. This is the logic some of the Western partners of ours promote. This is dangerous because they want to have their geopolitical interests on top of the interests of the Syrian people and the peoples of the region.
Thank you. The next question. Please take the floor, Your Excellency. There is no doubt that the escalating situation in Syria has been our point of focus here in this meeting today, based on the fact that the Federation of Russia met with the USA in order to achieve Geneva II. The Federation of Russia is a large country that has friends and interests in the region. It is a permanent member in the Security Council, and it has the responsibility of protecting the countries. It has contributed positively in the donor conference in Kuwait. Of course, friends might disagree on some points, but we agreed on continuing the discussions and consultations between the GCC and Russia in order to achieve a mutual consent. Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to question. You can now ask your question to one of the Arab ministers, Sky News Arabia.
رفيدة ياسين من قناة سكاي نيوز عربية يعني
From Sky News Arabia, until now, everything that you have mentioned, it hasn't been clear what was the disagreement about regarding the Syrian crisis, and what about the issue with the security of the Gulf that was mentioned by Russia over and over again.
So I said that we have minor differences. This is why you have heard no substance, no real meaningful problems that we might have. We have common grounds, common positions. We want Syria to be a peaceful country and want the peace to reign in, basing on the talks and given the full implementation, all-round implementation of the Geneva Communique as regards the Gulf security. It may also be clear there are other Arab countries and Iran. Between these two, there's some lack of trust, shortage of trust, well, at least between some of the Arab countries of GCC and Iran. And this is hardly propitious to promoting the interests of the coastal states. So we suggest that the process should be started and the dialogue should begin to elaborate measures of trust building and confidence building and implement these measures, and assistance can be provided every now and then by international organizations, OIC, UN Security Council, permanent members, EU. So this is an idea, a concept that we have voiced and that we bring to the consideration of the states of the region, if it's interesting to them, would be ready, together with our international partners, help normalize situation here and improve the overall atmosphere and lift all the risks that are now existent, to a large extent thanks to the absence of the regular dialogue mechanism.
مع الوزير.
الحوار
Strategic dialogue between the members of the GCC and the Russian Federation is open to all sorts of cooperation. The Federation of Russia is a partner, a strategic partner for the GCC, and both parties have a lot to give in different fields of oil, of trade, of investment, in addition to the role of the Russian Federation in the stability and security of the region. All these fall under the umbrella of this strategic dialogue. We are witnessing the quick and rapid developments of the region. These developments were duly discussed in the meeting, but both parties, the GCC and Russia, attach a great importance to the cooperation between them in all fields. Thank you. My question is to the Secretary General of the GCC. A few weeks ago, or probably 2 weeks ago, KSA, Salam Musafir RT channel, KSA issued a law that criminalizes whoever wants to fight outside KSA and criminalizing those who issue fatwas, encouraging people to go fight abroad. Don't you think this is an example to follow in all GCC countries? The GCC countries signed a convention, counter-terrorism, and the majority of the countries signed it. There are local efforts exerted in all the GCC member countries to face this challenge. Everyone is aware of the programs that we have launched. Cooperation is continuous between the GCC countries, whether in the efforts exerted to counter terrorism or in the exchange of information on how and why to fight terrorism. Please take the floor.
Assalamu alaikum.
Ghada Abdussalam, Al newspaper. My question goes to General Secretary of the GCC. From Kuwait, the Lebanese Speaker of Parliament has asked the GCC countries to play a role of mediator between the KSA and Iran. Are there steps you are taking in that regard? Or also my question to the Russian minister, is there anything that you're doing between the government and the Iranian and Iran?
First, شكرا غادة.
Thank you. The GCC countries have always been there to provide help and discussion and cooperation with our grand neighbor Iran. And we have also welcomed the speech of President Rouhani. We call for proving the good intentions, as there are some things relevant to the occupation of the Emirates Islands, the interference in the internal affairs of some of the GCC countries, and the influence in Syria. As long as all of this is continued, it does not support the positive speech or the
From all forms of developing contacts and dialogue, I hope is going to be a sustainable dialogue. If our partners in Saudi Arabia and Iran think it's in their interests, and such dialogue would require, as they might think and they might ask, that would require some cooperation from outside, we would give a positive response in this case, but will not impose ourselves on them. I have just commented on the situation around Ukraine, and in the recent 3 months, on a daily basis, representatives of the European countries and United States were there without leaving the country. What were they doing? What have they been doing there? Had they any contacts with the opposition, with the government, with the radicals? As some press believe and inform us, they spent a lot of their time at the Independence Square, and I believe that such mediation has proved to be wrongful, has proved to be detrimental, because obtrusiveness yields bad results, always. All forms of external mediation to help resolve the crisis by the current government in the framework of the current constitution will have the support of the Russian Federation, but it's up to the authorities to decide, and up to the opposition that represents part of the population in the parliament of Ukraine. But trying to impose our services as our Western partners do, which is not our choice, and that would be detrimental to the process in that country.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Last question to KTV 2.
I would like to ask about the invitation that was from His Highness the Emir addressed to His Excellency Vladimir Putin on how this will further strengthen the existing bilateral relations between the GCC, since His Excellency has visited other GCC countries, and how it will strengthen relations with Kuwait in particular. And if also His Excellency Dr. Al-Zayani can comment on the recent meeting between the anti-corruption agencies on setting up the unified body. Thank you.
Well, I have said that we maintain regular political dialogue with the Gulf countries, including with Kuwait, and the invitation that His Highness received from Mr. Putin to visit the Russian Federation is valid. Definitely, we have confirmed it today, and we agreed to come up with the specific instruments and documents and measures in trade and economic cooperation and investment cooperation to implement major projects. High-level and top-level contacts are always propitious to the development of relations, and they help incentivize projects in various fields. This is a proved fact, and we're confident that new top-level contacts between our countries will favor the development of our partnership with Kuwait and the strengthening of our ties with the whole of the GCC member states.
Thank you for the question. Actually, the meeting for the anti-corruption came in the framework of the implementation of the Higher Council, the decisions as part of the decision of the Higher Council of Kuwait from last December, as this is a ministerial council, and it also comes within the framework of a will to implement an international anti-corruption convention that also calls us to have regional conventions and agreements in that field. And so they held their first meeting, and they have agreed on a general framework. And indeed, the meeting was a success by all standards. Some decisions will be sent to the Higher Council through the Ministerial Council, and that includes reviewing or studying the issue of a possible regional agreement that would mention also uniform means of training and sharing information, and many topics that their excellencies, the head of the bodies and agencies, have agreed upon. And the spirit that I could feel from their excellencies was really a very positive and ambitious vibe in order to implement the guidance of our leader. May God protect him. Thank you. Thank you, sir, and thank you, Mr. Sergei Lavrov. Thank you to the Secretary General of the GCC. Thank you, everybody.